Welcome to the Nespresso and Surface Cafe Talks. Obviously, we're going to be having a couple panels throughout the next 2 days, or today and tomorrow. One panel today right now about the future of design, specifically around city design and how the ecological impact and climate change is going to be impacting design in general. And then later at noon, we have another panel around environmental impacts and how what artists are doing to fight and bring that news up to distribution to everybody. So yeah. One quick question, or actually really one quick statement for y'all. We have Nespresso as the coffee partner for our Basel, and we have a couple of stations over at the convention center. If you haven't been to the fair yet, please check us out. For every capsule that's drank here or at the convention center, we are actually donating $1 to the American forest. So every coffee you drink is going to make a difference. So with that being said, Nate, please take it away. I'm going to stop talking.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming this morning and joining us. Really excited for this discussion because we have such great panelists that are doing such important things in the space of using design solutions and art to address climate change and the things that we're kind of facing on that front. I guess we'll start off by going around, and why don't you guys just quickly introduce yourselves and tell everyone what you do and what projects you're currently working on that are relevant to this.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, my name is Ximena Caminos. I am the chair of the Reef Line, founder of the Reef Line, artistic director. I'm also an arts curator. My expertise is public art. And I came to Miami to create, where I worked a lot with Shohei, the final district.
This wasn't in our rehearsal. So my name is Shohei Shigematsu. I'm an architect based in New York, originally from Japan, living abroad already 25 years, 10 years in Europe, and now 15 years in New York, and have been working in Miami a lot. Lucky enough to be able to work with Ximena on Final District, but also now with Reef Line. So I have a deep kind of somewhat root to Miami. I'm very excited to be here with great panelists. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dror, and this is actually the most difficult question today because we do a lot of different things. I'm an artist, designer, inventor, futurist. My practice, Studio Dror, over the last 18 years focused on different types of design typologies, from very small product design all the way up to large architectural projects and master planning projects. About 4 years ago, I realized that we have major issues that creativity and holistic approach to problem solving is very needed, and it's our responsibility to address them, such as climate change and biodiversity being two of the largest one. And of course, the massive urbanization growth. So we started Supernature Labs, and Supernature Labs is an invention, technology, and design company that pushes a new agenda for the future of urbanism, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute.
So you see why I had them introduce themselves? They have so many titles and complicated things to explain in terms of your projects. And so I guess let's just start with the Reef Line, the project that Sho and Ximena are currently working on, which is an artificial reef system and underwater sculpture park just off the coast here of Miami Beach. And yeah, I guess how did this idea come about to take something like creating an artificial reef and bring art into the equation? And why do you think that was an important thing to do?
Well, the person that woke me up to I felt that everything I was doing in the arts was important, but not enough. And the person that woke me up to the enormous climate crisis was Francesca von Hasberg from Thyssen-Bornemisza. In an ocean convening in Jamaica, I met Cyril Gurs from Parley for the Oceans, and we spent 1 week picking up plastic from the shore. And we saw firsthand how all the reefs had died in Jamaica because people were basically throwing the trash in the rivers and the rivers to the oceans, and there was no more fish, no more reefs, no anything. So in that weekend, she decided to create the Pavilion for the Oceans in Venice, and I thought, how beautiful to be able to use the power of art to raise awareness, but not just raise awareness, but actually present solutions. So by living in Miami, which is ground zero climate change, I started meeting a lot of very interesting people, Colin Ford from Coral Morphologic, Kate Fleming from Bridge Initiative, and we found out that the city had declared all the shoreline of Miami Beach as a place where artificial reefs should be deployed, because at some point 20 years ago, a very bad sand replenishment project killed the fringe reef that was there. And you know, Miami is an artificial island anyway. So we thought, this makes sense, but instead of throwing like horrible concrete bolsters into the ocean, why don't we design incredible sculptures that function as reefs, but at the same time they become like a really interesting marine sanctuary, but a sculpture park. And we should use, you know, incredible minds to create this with us, artists, designers, architects. And that's how Colin Shohei came about, because we collaborated for, I don't know, 6-7 years in creating this monster that we have next door. And it was so much fun to work with OMA, and they are one of those people that surprise you, that when you expect something really good, they do something much better than really good. So I went with Kate to visit him in New York and told him the story and said, would you be our master planners? And that's how, you know, this kind of started to happen, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and OMA New York office has just released a great monograph, which Show was presenting yesterday at our space surface area in the design district. But you were talking then about how you'd like to do more of these radical projects, and like how the Reefline project is something that you think that can be a focus for the firm going forward. Yeah, maybe just talk about this project and bringing design into it and creating this underwater sculpture park.
Yeah, I think the commonality of three panelists is that I think we believe in the convergence of different minds and different domains. I think that the Faena district was also, in a way, a kind of convergence of commercial and cultural ambition, and also architecture and art. But now, of course, Ximena, as if that wasn't enough, Ximena pushed even further to converge, you know, environment, you know, tourism, culture, everything. And that's, of course, it sounds like there's a saying, right? Like, you know, do you have a saying like Columbus is the egg? Like, you know, Columbus put the egg like vertically by like smashing the bottom. And anyway, it sounds easy after it's been conceived, but it's such a great idea. And you know, if you have a great idea, of course you want to really participate, and you can't help saying you can't help. So we're very excited, and it's just starting, but we see full of potential, and also a kind of prototypical model that other cities can, you know, do something, well, develop it further or even do the same thing. So for me, this is, as an architect, when you see the moment that something new is happening with a very beautiful ambition for society, of course, that's the best moment as an architect, you know, to feel your expertise or massage your expertise. So I'm so grateful for this opportunity. But I think we should all believe in this kind of convergence and try to participate more and come up with the ideas more and more to really kind of connect the dots and create a kind of convergence.
And that's one of the things that we were talking about the other day, is that there's a convergence of science, technology, art, design, and these are the types of projects that are possible when we start thinking in that way, and blurring those lines. Supernature, if the reef line is to, you know, prevent further damage or build back damage that's already been done, Supernature is more of like a template for the future of urban planning and how we can move past the idea of sustainability into one of ecological harmony and living with nature. So maybe you could start about how this idea came about and what's the elevator pitch for, you know, what it is.
Yeah, thank you. First, I have to say something about the project, because I really think one of the most interesting elements with this project is the inspiration for artists and architects to think about the ocean in a different way as a platform, because obviously, you know, it's new, it's rare. So yeah, congratulations. It's really amazing.
Thank you.
You know, so Supernature, one of the first things that we realize is that urban planning haven't evolved much in the last several decades, and that all of the architectural expressions that we create today are confined within the structure, the infrastructure that is there and we created before. So, you know, working on many different projects over the years and realizing what disciplines, what industries are easier to push innovations and what other industries and disciplines are more difficult to push innovations, I felt super responsible to think differently about urban planning, to think differently about how we make choices in terms of how to develop infrastructure. Because yes, it's not easy to knock a building down, but it's even much harder to move a road or to move, you know, underground infrastructure. So what we started with is really understanding a couple of major problems that we have today. Number one, over the next 30 years, we're going to double urbanism as we know it, which is a fact that is just impossible to comprehend, right? Like, you look at cities today and you say, we're going to double everything that is currently built worldwide in the next 30 years. That's just, you know, if you look at history, if you look at timeline, that's just nearly impossible, actually, in terms of manufacturing capabilities today. But that's the demand that we have in terms of urban growth, in terms of, you know, population growth and the move of people to city centers. The second fact is that we're not just doubling urbanism, we're also doubling the land coverage of cities. What does that mean? It means that, you know, the area that cities occupy today is half of what we're going to see by 2050. So it became our mission to stop urban sprawl from continuing as we know it, to basically make sure that we're no longer, you know, taking a piece of land, regardless whether it's a forest land or a desert land, and basically saying, okay, let's just chop it up like this into, you know, boxes and have, you know, 40-something% road and road infrastructure and 50+% for, you know, building coverage, and then the rest, you know, we'll return some plants and we will plant some trees again, and for who knows how long. It's a construction site, right? That's currently how we're building neighborhoods, and that's currently how we're building cities. So we found that there is a different way that is essentially more efficient, faster to construct, cheaper to construct, and creates an environment that is more conducive for a better well-being for both people and other living things. We found a way to reduce infrastructure by close to 50% even if you're using existing type systems and existing types materials, which of course, there's ways for us to improve on all of those fronts, but to respect biodiversity in a different way. So all of a sudden, the aspect of nature conservation and nature preservation creates a completely different meaning in terms of urban planning. So yeah, it's a little bit hard to describe, like this with no visuals, but yeah, that's the essence of what we're working on.
And yeah, if you haven't been to the Super Lab site, definitely go visit that. I think it's easier to grasp once you see the visuals and things of that nature.
Dror's elevator is very long, and he must live in a super high rise.
I guess it's
he's a tall
because of the
guy.
space building, right?
Sorry.
One of the stats from the Supernature Labs that's on your site that blew my mind is that we use half of our natural resources just building things, infrastructure, which is mind blowing. And as part of that kind of conversation, and another thing that we touched upon a couple days ago was this idea of not just creating a building and leaving it, but thinking about what happens to it later on. What happened to it day one? What happens to it in 20 years? What happens to it in 50 years? And thinking more long term about it. Show, maybe you can just maybe talk about that idea, or how we need to change maybe our mindset when we're building buildings.
Well, I relate a lot to what Dror said, and maybe I told you in the rehearsal that I focused on food production as a means to relook at the urbanization of the world, because the urbanization actually pushed the food production out. Right, there was always a hard boundary between the city and the agricultural land. But now, because of the growth of the city and because of the need of the food, they're converging again. As you know, you can produce food almost anywhere now. So you can imagine like a high-rise being completely dedicated to food production, and all the human being can start live on the ground, for example, right? Well, that's not a good thing because it's a sprawl, but anyway, so the food system, looking at the food system and the food production is quite really interesting because it really relates to your life in a kind of different moments, from agricultural land to actually a table where you eat food. And what we looked at Harvard is to really, through the lens of food, relook at all those moments in your life and the city. And what's really fascinating is that, for example, the ocean, now actually globally people consume fish more than beef. That flip happened in 2016. So that means the ocean is also a food production platform. It always has been, but it's also, there's a lot of floating structures planned to actually produce vegetables on the ocean because it's easier to control the temperature, for example. So the ocean is also suddenly becoming like an agricultural land, which I think you're going to start looking at the city, the potential of the city in a different way. I'm not advocating that we should all also occupy ocean on top of the land, but anyway, I think we can be smart enough to connect these dots and again, to really think about the new way of city, new kind of city, because we somehow believe that New York or Paris or London is the best cities, but in our generation, we are responsible to rethink what the best city in our moment is. And I really think the younger generation actually gets this idea. They no longer are attached to like big cities, and I really am encouraged by this millennials trend, actually.
Yeah, that's true. I think especially the pandemic, kind of pushed us towards this moving to different places. I know that Dror just relocated from his studio from New York to Miami. He's moving into a new studio next week. I also relocated from New York to Miami. So I think there's a lot of... We're all in Miami now. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see why. I want to go back to the art component for a second. Another thing that Ximena is doing is also working on something called the underline, which is, renovating and putting a green space underneath the metro rail across the bridge, and turning it into a sculpture park full of public art, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I like a lot the concept of urban acupuncture. The underline was it was like the backyard of the metro rail. It was really wasteland, and Meg Daly, who's the founder of the underline, was bike riding once, fell, broke 2 arms, started to take the metro, and saw the potential of creating this 10-mile linear park. So what I did for them is, because it's the cultural master plan. So I put together a series of really, really smart and interesting people around the world. I created a committee from Cecilia Alemani, who's now the director of the Venice Biennial, and Mosen from Harvard, the ex-dean of Harvard School of Design that I met through Shohei, actually. And we analyzed the whole linear park and created something that is very meaningful to gather. I saw it as an urban scar, something that was ripping the tissue of the city, and used the metaphor of, okay, let's transform this scar into a river, a place where the community comes, bathe, they exchange and rejoice, So that's what it's starting to be. Actually, I think the first mile is already finished. So I handed over, though. I said, okay, this is a master plan, here you go. And that I have a lot of other things to do, but it's happening.
Yeah, you have a million plates spinning at the same time at all times.
Yeah.
And so the art component of that and the Reef Line and projects like these, describe why that's a key component for these types of projects, what it does for something, instead of just turning it into just a green space or just doing artificial reef underneath, the ocean, what the art component brings to the equation.
Yeah. First of all, regarding, this conversation about space, I think that public space is more relevant than ever, because most people don't have space. And so to create public space is very, very, very important right now. And then art gives a sense of identity and pride. It's also to a community, and it's also a fantastic vehicle to connect people. Art can work, as a bridge between people from all different social, I don't know how you say it in English. I'm sorry, my English is not perfect.
What is the word in Spanish?
Estratos sociales,
Platform?
Yeah, for different people, from the grandson to the grandma. And I like also to think about the reef line. Like New York has the high line, and Miami has the underline, and Miami Beach has the reef line, which is like 3 levels, 3 layers of different heights. But they are all using art as a tool for change. I mean, I'll quote Kate with her famous "Art makes the revolution irresistible." Art is a fantastic tool that has been an ally of all important human movements. And it's the tool I have. I mean, other people have others, but I've used that tool for many, many purposes, and it's always served me very well.
Yeah, the team that they have at the Reef Line is one of the most mixed teams I've ever seen. They've got artists and curators and scientists and engineers and marine biologists.
And the X Prize is our partner, which is incredible. So we have all the X Prize team doing a coral restoration prize, which is a $20 million. As you guys know, the reefs are dying at a very fast rate, and Florida has the 3rd largest reef in the world, and it's the one that's dying faster. So there's a large competition right now to restore. Elon gave $100 million for a carbon capture prize. And that fueled the coral restoration, because it all starts in the oceans, absorb the biggest part of the carbon dioxide that we create.
Yeah, and it's I think by everyone bringing these different skill sets together is when we can start making magic. Ximena was just asking me if I knew a social media manager that is fun, cool, knows art, and also knows marine biology. So if you guys know anyone like that, give her a shout. She's hiring. For Dror, maybe you can talk to us next about like, because I feel like a lot of times people think about solutions for things and they sound good, but what are the hurdles for actually implementing some of this stuff that we've like been talking about? And is it realistic that we ever get to a place that a future that Supernature Labs imagines?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I think it starts with education, right? I think that we all have our prefix templates in our mind for things that we believe are right and wrong. And we need to break some of those fixated templates in order to think differently about how we live. It's funny that I find myself often promoting the Supernature approach as an economical way, right? Like building faster, building cheaper, a better product, a better environment. But really the deep motivation is change human behavior, right? Like architects always refer to the fact that we shape buildings and buildings shapes us. Obviously, you behave completely different if you sit in a cubicle under a fluorescent light with no window versus having a gorgeous corner office with amazing vegetation outside. Our neighborhoods have the ability to completely change our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with other people, and our relationship with the natural environment. So for me, what Supernature really tries to educate is that we have a symbiotic relationship with absolutely everything around us, right? Like our energy is influenced by the energy of those that are next to us. It's influenced by the other living things. I think thanks to the pandemic today, we understand that our health, both mental and physical, is directly in relationship with the environment next to us. So this is the very first fundamental kind of value proposition. We find ourselves now talking to, big, like different mayors and municipalities and governments around the world about their future growth. And for them, some of the discussion starts with GDP, right? Like how do we improve GDP? And it's clear today to a lot of places that GDP is human productivity, and it's have a direct correlation to what we call a GDH, which is people's happiness. So creating environments that are promoting those things is huge value. So the conversation shift, right? Like developers often just think of fast financial return. And now there's a way for us to think a little bit differently and still incentivize those short-term needs. But that's one aspect. There's of course regulatory issues and things that have been written in the 60s that are still making limitations for architectural decisions.
We have a few minutes left. I wanted to maybe open it up for Q&A to see if anyone had a question they would like to ask. Plastic trash. Yeah. How do we get rid of plastic trash?
It's a very big problem. I think that one of the biggest plastic polluters are the microplastics, and the plastics that mainly come from food packaging. End up in the ocean. Some of them even take 500 years to dissolve. And right now, there are babies being tested, they have microplastic particles without even, because it just comes through the mom. It's very, very, very big. There is an X Prize that is being created right now that's called the Future of Food Packaging. And it's, Danone is funding it. I don't know. We proposed that prize and it's actually being created. It's a totally biodegradable thin film plastic that has 2 years of shelf life, but it's not plastic, but it serves a purpose. It's a big problem. I mean, landfills, you know, it's very difficult to think about a solution. Sometimes speaking with my peers at the Reef Line, and there are a lot of very brilliant scientists. I mean, all of us were working on solutions, but I think there aren't enough neural centers to reorganize the priorities. There are so many people tackling the problems from so many different angles, but I think we lack organizations that actually center all those efforts and prioritize. So the question is, do we need those centers, or do we, a very contemporary question, decentralize it all?
Everything goes back to NFTs and
The
crypto.
Mycelium network.
Any other questions?
Thank you guys for doing this. Where do you see the role of robotics and AI in solving this problem as opposed to just kind of human solutions?
I saw in a next prize actually a robot, and one of the prizes were these robots that actually can discern in the landfills and separate all the trash. There are so many cities that don't recycle properly. I think it's a very, I don't know if you guys saw the Refika Nadal AI algorithm. It's a giant screen on the beach. I think AI is a fantastic, tech is an ally, that's for sure. We just need to use the power of tech in an organized manner, but it could actually, you know, accelerate or catalyze the process of being able to come up with better solutions.
No, please.
Yeah, I think the future of robotics is fascinating. I mean, it's clear to us, especially if we're talking about construction, that the only way for us to lower cost of construction is through construction automation. And we have today amazing technological capabilities to see, you know, communities being built completely by, you know, automation processes. So we're actually working towards that with our approach. It's, you know, there's so many amazing companies right now that are working on prefab and modular type solutions that can be, you know, fully automated. Again, I think it's sometimes a question of the typology that we're using and the technology that we're using, right? Because you see, let's say, 3D printing companies trying to build ordinary homes, but the technology allows you to build something completely different. You don't need to build a box with a robotic arm. You can build a much more interesting shape that actually can be, you know, nicer and better for human life. So yeah, I think we're going to see some unbelievable robotic solutions in this decades that are creating amazing vocabulary.
Just to add, I mean, coming from Japan, where the population is decreasing radically, of course, aging is one of the big issue there, and robotics actually helps, you know, supporting the aging community. That's kind of one angle that I see a positive thing. As for AI, of course, the deep learning and such, we have to see how it goes. I hope that there would, you know, someone polite or someone nice will actually teach the AI so that AI will be nice.
Yeah, we don't want a Terminator situation. Where
Well,
the
right now,
machines
of course,
take
it's
over.
exploited in a kind of totalitarian regime. So, you know.
Yeah, no, it is. Like in places like China, and it's used to track people and the
I
population.
didn't say the country, but
Well, I'm saying it. And I think, and maybe we can just end on this. Maybe part of like the 3D printing and AI and these kinds of new technologies, and you were saying, you know, building houses in different shapes is also material innovation. And I think you were talking about it with the you know, the plastic potential, creating, you know, a different material. As people that build things show, and Dror, like what kind of things are you seeing in terms of material innovation? Is there anything that you're excited about in that space?
Yeah, material science is a whole world today, which is fascinating. We actually started Supernature Labs 4 years ago with a huge interest in mycelium specifically and the future of mycelium, which still remains for me one of the most exciting ways for us to create. And the reason is it's just grows so fast, and you have the ability to form mycelium into all kinds of types of materials and densities and properties. I mean, from leather that uses in fashion and other needs of replacement of leather, all the way up to bricks, replacement for bricks, and replacement of I-beams. So I'm super excited about obviously the materials that we can grow, and yeah, mycelium is just one of them. But
I think that I'm more interested in how the people's kind of expectation and the materiality sometimes doesn't really coincide. For example, glazing, like glass. If you really think of a building performance and the strict guidelines now that are put in Europe and some of US cities, you can't make glass buildings, right? But people still want transparency. I'm interested in this gap where people want the transparency, but people has to deal with sustainability. So glazing, as we know, should evolve, right? Because you need both. And I think that's a kind of area that I'm interested in to really depict the kind of changing society and how you can actually evolve the materiality with the new expectations.
Yeah, it's a fascinating. Material science is definitely one of the most fascinating things, and I think it's going to really grow in the next few years here into some amazing things. Well, I think we have to leave it there because we have another talk coming up in like 15, 20 minutes. So stick around and to hear the second talk of the day. I think Vince is just going to say a quick outro to go see them at our Basel.
That and also all the capsules, as a FYI, we actually recycle everything in the entire capsule. So whether it's the grounds themselves, whether it's the actual aluminum that's made that we use to make the capsules, we actually give you free bags if you drink an espresso at all, and you can actually take those bags, dump your capsules in there, and mail them back to us, and we pay for the shipping and everything, and we actually take those and change them into crazy, beautiful things, such as bicycles, such as pens, such as vegetable peelers, which are, super helpful. And on top of that, make sure that we use that coffee ground for more sustainable items. But yes, at the end of the day, enjoy your time. Thank you guys for coming out, and we hope to see you at the next couple of panels.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.